Today we're going to look at another very ordinary object that we see and most of us put on every day, and that is the shoe. Although not every one of us put shoes on like this, but most of us have some kind of shoe that is common for us to wear. And so we think we might know this object, but if we've never drawn it, we might discover new things about it. In drawing a shoe that we wear every day, one thing, again, to keep in mind is the overall shape. And to remember that the foot has height, it has width, it has depth, and so it might be good to do a few preliminary sketches. If you think of a shoe box, which shoes come in, this is not a shoe box, but it's a similar shape. We're reminded of its height, width, and depth. And so to do a few preliminary sketches, keeping that in mind, and again, we would pose this in some way that's interesting, but in the beginning, a few preliminary sketches might be good, where we just remind ourselves what a box shape might look like. It's hard to get this in the camera here. So I think I would be inclined to do a few sketches like that just to get a sense of the general shape of the shoe. And then with each preliminary sketch could get a little more refined. Oh, we have a shadow here. I'll have to draw right-handed. That'll be interesting. The front of the shoe, basic shape may be a box, but then, of course, it curves around to accommodate the toes. But even in doing this, we would want to remember the depth, that the foot has to fit, needs some room, some height for it to fit. So even if we're looking at it this way, there's going to be some depth there to accommodate that part of the foot. So I think I would do some preliminary sketches like that just to help me see, because I see better when I actually draw something, and to remember that the opening where the foot goes and the leg, of course, comes up here is going to, it's basically an ellipse, and we've talked about ellipses before. So here's a circle. And that's not really a circle, but it's one shape when we look at it head on like that. But then if we tip it, it's a little bit different shape. It's more of an ellipse, or the way this shoe is shaped. There's the tongue. So depending upon how we tip it, that shape of the opening would be different. So that's important to observe too. These things would all be important to look at before we get into the detail of the laces, which for some of us is just delicious. We just want to go straight to getting how it looks to have the lace go in that hole there and show. I mean, that's just, for me, and I know for some people, just a lot of fun. But without the structure supporting that detail, the drawing might be disappointing. So it's important to look at those big shapes first. And of course, you can pose the shoe any way you like. You can do the bottom, or you can do some strange view. Here we have a whole bunch of different shapes. You could draw this up and try to get that arc, which would be a very interesting thing to achieve. And this can be done, of course, in graphite or colored pencil, depending upon what the interest is or how interesting the color of the subject itself is. when we have the great opportunity to do something a little more exotic, such as these well used and retired. And I learned that when you are finished with a pair of toe shoes, you cut them and tie them like this. It's a kind of ritual. Someone has very graciously loaned these to me. She will want them back as part of her collection. But these satisfied my desire to do ribbons. I just find ribbons so interesting to draw. And the beat up nature of these, which tell their own story. And so I used it as a way to get something that is, I followed the lines and shapes and colors literally, but because it's such a sort of jumbled mess here, it gave me an opportunity to come up with something almost abstract. And as I showed this to another artist friend, he said, I don't know what that is. And that was actually a compliment to me, because I just had so much fun just using those shapes as an interest in the shape and the color. And of course, as you can tell, I took liberties with the color. I put some blue in there for the shadows and some purples and even a few greens and everything. And on one level, you can look at it and say, yeah, it looks like a pair of ballet shoes. But then on another level, it's just kind of an interesting shape, with all the twists and turns. And I didn't even, I consider this finished, so I didn't even go in and make it real obvious which ribbons were there and where they were going. I just kind of liked the understatedness and the non-literalness of that. So that's always an opportunity, or often an opportunity with the subject matter, to use it as a way to get some interesting shapes and colors and go as far with it in terms of a literal representation as you want.